Hi, this is Brian Rizzo, CEO of ICE Cable Systems, and we're here to talk a little bit today about myths and some of the most common myths that we see in the wire and cable industry. You'll see more from our myth segment coming up, but this piece here is we're going to talk a little bit today about one of, if not the most common myths that we see, and that is the idea that all cable is the same and price is the only thing that matters. Look, there's a lot of price pressure these days, a tremendous amount of price pressure in every industry, and certainly this one is no exception. The price pressure is that dealers, companies that sell and install custom home theater systems, they need to come in at the lowest possible price in the bid because they're working off of a bid structure. The homeowner or building owner that's bidding out this job oftentimes is going to take the cheapest number. Well, that level of price pressure can translate into them, in response, buying the cheapest materials possible, the cheapest materials that they can get their hands on, in order to hit the number that they need to hit to still get that job. In some areas, I'm sure it works, but wire and cable being a core structural component of these systems is not a place where you want to start cutting corners and using cheap wire and cable. The truth is wire and cable is not all the same, and there's a lot of differences in the cable, whether you're talking about the dispensers, the cables themselves, the safety ratings. We'll get into some of that stuff in a moment, but there's tremendous differences in them that not only have impact for the dealers, but more importantly have impact for either the homeowner or the business owner, whoever is actually having this cable run in their establishment. Let's take a look at what some of these things are. First of all, in saying that there's huge differences in product quality and materials, one of the ways I would sort of spell that out a little bit and translate that for you is recently we shot a segment on a comparison of Cat 5 products where we took our boxes of Cat 5, compared it to some of the commonly seen inexpensive competition out there, and what we found was pretty interesting. We found in an average box about 2 pounds less copper. Not only does that not make UL specification, but it also, from a performance perspective, does not get done what needs to happen in these cables. And for companies running networks where a certain level of performance is expected and required, it's a compromise. It's going to compromise your job. That was just one example. Other examples that we see constantly have to do with, in some ways, more important areas, which have to do with safety ratings. It's not uncommon to see stuff rated a certain way that actually is made with materials that will not pass those ratings. It's just printed to have a certain safety rating, but doesn't actually have it. Why would guys compromise safety ratings? It's a lot less money. Compounds like copper are extremely expensive. One of the easiest ways, next to shaving copper, for companies to save a tremendous amount of money on the cable is to use less expensive compounds that don't make safety rating. And sometimes they'll combine the two. The way that you get a really cheap price is you use less copper and non-UL compliant compounds. That formula, though there are other ways to cut corners, but that tried and true formula will get you really, really cheap cables all day long. There will be companies who sell that stuff. In every industry, you're always going to have somebody who plays at that level, that makes products to the least common denominator in order to get them the absolute cheapest possible. From a performance perspective, as well as a safety perspective, those are compromises. Now, the dealer is out there selling to the homeowner that this is the guy to use. I'm the guy to use in your system because I'm going to build it right. I'm going to put top quality products in there, so on and so forth. From the homeowner's perspective, they're buying into that. They don't want to find out that this type of product is being installed in their home or in their business. So there's a little bit of a problem there. If you look at this from the consumer's perspective, the consumer needs to be aware that given the price pressure in these situations, that the installer is not compromising their safety and performance by using cheap cables. And frankly, they need to even consider other areas outside of cable, but cable just happens to be a core area where once this stuff is installed, once it's pulled through the walls, it's really hard and, albeit extremely expensive, to change. You don't want to You don't want to be in a situation where somebody pulled really cheap cable into your home, compromised cable in some way, shape, or form, only to find out that it's compromised and have to go in and rip it out later. For a few dollars, it's just not worth it. The old saying of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure must have been meant for wire and cable, because once the walls are up, you don't want to find out that there's an issue with your cable or that it's compromised. One of the other major keys here is that, cheap product happens in a number of different ways. There's two main ways that it happens. We talked a moment ago about, sacrificing compounds and copper. The second major way it happens is, from the dealer's perspective, is it's old. We're in a copper market right now that's rising at unprecedented rates. It's at all-time highs. That's price pressure constantly moving the price of wire and cable up. Well, the way that guys will buy cheap cable is they'll go and find somebody who's sitting on old copper cable. The problem is from the dealer's perspective, it skews their idea of what legitimate pricing is on a product. If I have stuff that I bought 6 months ago at 6-month-old copper, I could sell that stuff really cheap. It's not realistic. It's not, in terms of today's market, it's not a long-term solution. Somebody who's looking to buy in a short-term, spot-buy type of situation, deal-of-the-day type of situation, that's great. If you're looking for a long-term vendor, that's not really a great solution for you. So, again, the two ways, you either get compromised product or you get old product that's sitting on the shelves and is a stopgap. The areas that we talked about, safety ratings, copper content. The last one that we didn't hit on is adherence to standards and specifications. If you want to make sure your stuff makes spec, you got to make sure that the cables are built right and are built to spec. When you see the super cheap cables out there, there's no mystery here. There's no way to make cables at absolute rock bottom prices and still maintain proper spec. It's just not possible from a materials perspective to actually get that done. So if you see super cheap stuff going on out there, you got to know it's compromised in one way or another, whether it be specification, copper content, etc. And if it's not, it's really old. Lastly, labor nowadays is one of the, it used to be one of, now it's by far the largest component of these jobs. And it used to be that you had, $50,000, $80,000 projectors in these jobs, and, labor became a very small portion. Nowadays, the hardware is very inexpensive. Labor is where all the costs are. And if the cable products that companies are buying and installing are slowing down the job, it's going to cost the installer more in order to get this job done. How does this relate to the consumer? For the consumers out there, that means if these products are slowing down these companies on the job, they're going to have to charge more for labor. From the dealer's perspective, they don't want to pay more. They don't want to have more expensive labor costs because they need to get off this job and get on to the next. So it hurts both the dealer and the consumer to have labor hiked up by inefficient products that are really slowing down the job and causing it to drag on much longer. So whether we're talking about labor and soft costs, compromised product that hurts both the dealers as well as the end users of this product, and old/cheap product, both the dealer and the end user end up as losers as a result of working off of the myth or the assumption that everything is the same, I'm just going to take the cheapest stuff out there. I'm Brian Rizzo, CEO of Vice Cable Systems. Thanks for spending time with us.